Because I could not stop for that by Dickison. So, because I could not stop for that, he kindly stopped me for the courage held just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had to put away my labor and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields grazing green. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us, the dew draw, quivering and chills, for the gossamer, my gown, my tiplet and my toe. We paused before the houses that seems as swelling in the ground. The roof was secretly visible, and the cornice and crown. Since then, it's centuries and yet feels shorter than the day. I first surmised the horses' heads and were toward eternity. The speaker utilized the famous line because I couldn't stop for that. He kindly stopped me for. So in the first lines, the poem foreshadowed the personification that we'll use to describe the experience of entering the afterlife through the stanza. Death came to the halt for the speakers and assisted her into the vehicle that contained just herself and mortality. One of the most captivating in line 1 to 4 is that interesting openers of English is that language poetry is found in this poem at the first person speakers, subsequently shown to the woman by description of her dress in stanza 4, meets the death, personified the character who arrives to pick up the woman as if he were running for some sort of 19th century taxi service. So for this ride, however, occurs that not because of the woman desire it, but because it's her time to die. Because she could not stop for that, and few of others would not to do so if it's death, responsible to do so. In lines 2, depiction of the death as kindly depicts a gentlemanly figure going about his business while treating those who scops up with respects. It's worth noting though that the death, like the rest of the poem, remains silent here, even if the death isn't depicted as terrible and terrifying person. He remains a mysterious and gloomy person. So for the lines 5 to 8, the utter exit from his life symbolized by the carriage drift. She is ensconced into the vehicle that an immortality within Dickson states, put away the labor and leisure too, for his courtesy she expressed her willingness to die. This also indicates that the author has accepted his own immortality. She even gave up everything she desired in life and jumped into the carriage with that of immortality. She may be aware that they would have taken her captive even if she had not gone willingly, but this could not appear to change her opinion of two characters as kind, attentive, and even gentle. This depicted as a death approach her slowly, enabling her to reflect as they traveled. He knew no hurry. He takes her on a leisurely and patient journey through her life. Immortality is as silent as its travels. So for the line 9 to 12, they passed the school where children struggled, meaning that the author is given a few seconds to reflect on her youth. They didn't travel the past gazing green, which allows the author to reflect on her youth. They then process past the setting sun. This represents the author's demise. The transition from life to eternity is shown as a beautiful and senior sunset. So for the line 13 to 16, in the fourth verse, the tone abruptly changed, and the author suddenly realized that she is cold now that the sun has set, and she shakes She then noticed that she is undressed prior to the author was perfectly at ease with the death and immortality. After all, she was just wearing her on a sheer nightgown as she rolled alongside them. So for the author has a deep relationship with the death and mortality in the first three stanzas. She doesn't mind being undressed when she described death as a gentle suitor who is nice and civil. When the sun sets and the chilly damp sets in, she realized she was dressed inappropriately. So for the line 17 to 20, they pause before her new home swirling on the ground at her moment of recognizing that she has been seduced by the death. The roof was barely visible. She claimed that the carnies under the ground, as the author finds that is not all she expected. The tone shift to disappointment to disappointment. So disappointment comes in as the sun sets on her life, as she stands in front of her new forever home like a gentle suitor that was courteous and gentle. So with the promises of eternity, he entices her in as she feels tricked now that she sees her little damp, endless home. And for the line 21 to 24, as life goes on without her, it has become centuries and yet feels shorter than the day. It has been years since the first, hypnotized by the death, have seduced her. That he had appeared to be kindly gentle at first, but abandoned her in a dark, cold, wet grave.
Themes. Because I couldn't stop for death has several major themes. Mortality and death are the most apparent examples. The fact that this poem depicts these two ideas from a position of eternity is what makes it so intriguing. When the speaker describes her encounters with death, she is already in the hereafter. This brings up a new theme, immortality. This helps to explain why the speaker remains so calm for the entirety of the poem. Other Emily Dickinson poems deal with similar issues. Tone and mood. The tone and feel of this poem are really distinct. The tone of the poet's or speaker's voice throughout the poem is calm and measured. She is aware of what is going on around her, yet she is not excessively affected by it. Throughout the first few stanzas, this is maintained until the speaker approaches death. Things begin to shift a little at this point as the tone gets more dark. Words like chill and quivering demonstrate this. The speaker asserts flatly that the horse heads are aimed towards eternity in the final words, restoring the peace of the poem's first half. The poet's endeavor to create an emotional experience for the reader is the poem's structure and form. Emily Dickinson's poem Because I Couldn't Stop for Death is structured into quatrains, which are 4-line groups. Although there are examples of perfect rhyme in the poem, the quatrains do not follow a single rhyme scheme. The first two stanzas, for instance, myself, immortality, and civility. The meter is now considerably more reliable. It has the appearance of a regular metrical pattern. 4 sets of 2 beats make up the first and third lines, totaling 8 syllables. The first beat is unstressed, while the second beat is strained. Lambic tetrameter is the term for this. Lumps, or unstressed and stressed beats, are also used in the second and fourth lines, but each line only has 3 sets of 2 beats. Lambic trimeter is the term for this. Literary devices. In Because I Couldn't Stop for Death, Dickinson employs a number of literary tropes. Alliteration, allusion, personification, and enjambment are only a few examples. Alliteration happens when words are used in sequence or at least appear near together and begin with the same sound. For example, in the second stanza, work and leisure, and in the third stanza, school and stroll. One of the most evident tactics at work in this poetry is personification. It happens when a poet imbues human characteristics into a non-human creature or object. From the opening stanza, death is vividly personified. He plays the role of the speaker's suitor, persuading her to broad the carriage and travel into the unknown with him. He is polite and kind. An allusion is a phrase that is intended to evoke specific thought without explicitly stating it. Although it is not stated explicitly in the poem's lines, it is evident that the speaker is in some form of afterlife, most likely the Christian concept of heaven. However, the fact that it is not stated directly leaves room for a variety of interpretations as to what kind of environment the speaker is currently living in. Enjambment is another essential technique utilized in poetry. When a line is cut off before its natural stopping point, this happens. Enjambment forces a reader to move quickly from one line to the next to easily resolve a phrase or sentence. One must move on. Consider the transition between the first stanza's lines 3 and 4 and the second stanza's lines 2 and 3.